is Hannah, and I work with Bell Smiles for Developmental Disabilities. We are a nonprofit which helps children with developmental disabilities in Uganda and in Western Washington. May, which we're in that month, is mental health disorder awareness. And I wanted to hit on some things or talk about some things that have to do with people or children with developmental disabilities, and how that affects their mental health. Often, people with developmental disabilities do not get diagnosed with the appropriate mental health disorders that they have, because a lot of times there's an overlap of symptoms and things that we see, behaviors that we see, that are actually more mental health related as opposed to their developmental disabilities. I've seen that in my own child's life, and that is definitely something that is recorded. So I just wanted to hit on some things so that you guys can be more aware and have more information, because the more information, the more that we can do and help each other. And that is what our nonprofit is about, is to help and encourage each other and become a community for each other, and then help each other grow and live fulfilling and prosperous lives. So 3 out of 4 children have 2 types of mental health issues, and these are kids with developmental disabilities. So a lot of these statistics have to do with kids with developmental disabilities, but 1 in 6 kids with developmental disabilities has a mental disorder on top of their developmental delay or disability that they are also diagnosed with. And if you guys have been following us, or if you follow any of the statistics, kids with developmental disabilities often get diagnosed later, or maybe not even at all, and they don't even get diagnosed until they're older, because they just aren't aware of the symptoms and the things that put them in that category to have a developmental disability. So things like autism often are overlooked, and depending on your social status, depending on your race, depending on where you live, it makes it even harder to get diagnosed. And even once you get diagnosed, to get the treatments that you need to get to help you live a functioning life is an issue. So a lot of the families that we help in Uganda, transportation is a really big problem, because you have to go a lot farther for the doctors, and then there's finding the doctors to help, and there is a limited doctors and limited resources. So depending where you live has a big impact. So kids are less likely to be diagnosed with a mental disorder, but that doesn't mean that they don't have any. So I wanted to give some statistics, because it is quite interesting. But 1 in 6 kids in the United States are diagnosed with a mental or behavior disorder that also have a developmental disability. That is quite a lot. That's 17% of the population in the United States. So if you think about how many children in the world, so there is approximately 317 million kids worldwide that are affected by a developmental disability of some kind. So even just 1 in 6, 1 in 4 people generally are diagnosed with a mental disorder. And some of those are depression, anxiety, ADHD, and then behavior disorders also are in another category. So those are the 4 major categories. There are also different other ones. We're not going to go into those. There are so many. So if that's your thing, definitely look into that. But one thing that I found quite interesting is that like I said, 3 out of 4 kids that have one mental disorder will have another one. So 3 out of 4 who had depression also had anxiety. And anxiety is a huge thing for a lot of people with developmental disabilities. A lot of that, I think, stems from them not having as much control over certain aspects of their life, whether it's the inability to be able to communicate properly, the inability to be able to do their body just to move in the ways that other people without a developmental disability have. So a lot of it just stems from not understanding and not knowing, or not having that control. There's anxiety. There's also a lot of anxiety that have to do with the social skills that they lack, or are deficient in. And I think one of the things that I want to highlight is just because you have a deficiency or a delay in one area doesn't mean that you don't have other areas in your life where you are a lot more successful. And so I think making sure, especially as a caregiver and as a parent, making sure you're highlighting and encouraging the things that someone does well and exceeds in is super important, because if you focus on the negative all the time, then you will see a lot of negativity and it's going to affect your mental health. So, in the year 2016 to the year 2019, about 10% of children who have a developmental disability also has ADHD. 9%, or a little bit more than that, have anxiety. About 8.9% have some kind of behavioral problem. And a lot of times these are also just a byproduct of their developmental disability. Sometimes people equate a behavior problem. They don't realize that it has to do with trauma. A lot of times it has to do with some kind of trauma. And it's not necessarily that it's a big trauma to one person, but it could be. So I think knowing and looking at the reasonings why something is happening, you can kind of gear your focus to how you can go about correcting a behavior that is unacceptable in certain situations, understanding what behaviors someone can control and can't, because sometimes there are things that people with developmental disabilities, they don't have a whole lot of control. It's just something that their body does. 4.4% of kids with developmental disabilities will also have depression. And you have to remember that depression looks different in everyone. So, and especially in kids. So understanding what that looks like for your child. So one of the things that I can say that is the best gauge for your own child is if you're wondering if they have some kind of mental health issue or disorder, is to know their baseline. What is their baseline? What are things that they do? What are things that are common in their developmental disability and what they have? If they have autism, certain things, you know that these are things that are common. And if that's their baseline, maybe it doesn't mean. So it's looking and making sure you collect all this data so that you can present it to the people who are helping your child. Now, as the age of a child gets higher, their rates become so much more higher. So knowing that young children have a lot less issues than older children. So the older they are and the more they're in the world, the more they're interacting with other people, or the more that they are disengaging from other people, you're going to see their mental health change. So, and every person is different. So knowing that every person is going to be different and how you go about working through these things is a process, and it's a problem solving process. So you have to really engage with the person, really engage as a family, really engage with your community and your health care team. So 8 out of 10 children who had depression received treatment. So this means this is actually can be a good and bad thing, because sometimes treating these mental health issues are super important, but sometimes we over treat people too. So this is where knowing the difference between if something's major and minor, and this is the only way that you can do it, is through trial and error, talking with your mental or your health team, and working with your family and seeing what works, because there are just certain things that, depending on the person with developmental disabilities, might not be possible. So 6 out of 10 kids who had anxiety received treatment, and 5 out of 10 kids with behavioral problems had treatment. And I think that last one, the behavioral issues, is the worst statistic, because when you have a behavioral issue, a lot of times it has to do with either their disability, or it has to do with something that's not right. So minimizing these things. So let's talk a little bit about some things that we can do to help with our mental health. So this goes for kids with developmental disabilities, but this also goes for families, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? If a parent is not taking care of their self and their mental health, it is going to affect their child, because if you're stressed out, you might not have the patience that you need. You might not get the sleep that you need. So you also might be consuming a lot more caffeine and a lot more energy drinks. You might be consuming more alcohol than you should be. You might be overeating. You might be undereating. So there are all these different things that really play into how we can help our families and our children with developmental disabilities. And there are ways that we can help. And honestly, if we're doing something as a parent, we're mirroring these concepts for our children. And even if they are limited in what they understand that we're doing, it still can be really, really helpful. So one of the biggest things that we can do is stress management. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a ton of stressful stuff in my life. There's no way around it. There's always going to be something that comes up. But having a plan for your day-to-day, having a routine often helps, but also being able to deviate from your routine also helps. I know kids with developmental disabilities often function so well on a routine. So when they're not on that routine, it is very difficult for them. So being able to have a plan for when your routine does change is super important. So being proactive in your stress management is super important. And some of the things that you can do to help stress management is drinking enough water, making sure that you eat properly, making sure that you're exercising or getting activity enough, making sure that you're relaxing enough. Like sometimes we overdo things. We are so busy that we don't have time to sit still. Our kids don't have time to sit still. If they're always in tons of activities and tons of therapies, like they don't have this downtime to decompress too. And they also need that. So that's going to help with stress management. And as a parent, I think this is one of the biggest things that we can do to help our children, is to help them learn how to manage their time and manage their stress themselves. Because eventually the goal is that they can help do a lot of this themselves. And I can tell you this from working with people with developmental disabilities my whole life. There's so much that they can do and so much that they can help in this process. So don't underestimate what your child can do and become as they're older, and you give them these skills. So some of the other things that can help are having a hobby. So the hobbies that are more creative are really great for your mind, but maybe you're not creative. Maybe you like sports and that's a hobby. So having things that you can look forward to is super important. You just the ability to have fun sometimes and create these experiences of having fun. Now, what your child thinks is fun, it might be totally different than what you think is fun. So making sure that you're gearing it towards the person and not just saying, oh, we like to do this as a family. And maybe it is something that you need to do as a family, but then also making sure that you're doing things that your child, and building that into their routine and their schedule. Another thing that is very helpful is mindfulness. So this is stuff like meditating, taking time to relax, taking time to set aside where you're actively contemplating things that you're doing. So something that I've seen that is super helpful in this mindful process is cooking or some kind of activity where you really have to put your focus on that. So you're focusing on something else, but also on things that you need. So, and it just really opens up these different pathways. And our brains are so neuroplastic, and they just can change and grow so much, but we have to be able to do it in lots of different ways because our brains are so different. And there's not just one way to help your brain kind of grow as you grow as a person. So another thing is having a belief system that has a community attached to it. So one of the things that I absolutely love is to pair my hobby with a community. So I do paper crafting and art. And so getting together with a group of my friends that also love to do this, and we talk about the stuff that we're doing. We talk about and we interact. So so maybe activities in which your kid has this hobby and they're connecting with other children and other people is very important. Also having a belief system is very helpful. So however that looks for you, it really, really is helpful because it gives you something to focus on other than yourself. Volunteering is another way that you can help with your mental health because you're not focusing on yourself, you're focusing on other people. And often, sometimes when we are too introspective on ourselves and too thoughtful in ourselves, and I know that I've seen with kids with developmental disabilities, especially autism, they are self-aware about themselves. And that is a great thing because they often can tell you or show you what they need, but they often have a hard time understanding other people. So turning their thought on them and having it go out is so helpful. It just really helps with your mental health. Sometimes having a support animal or pet is very helpful. As you see, you have my dogs. They are a big support system. They also are a big cause of stress, but they can help comfort you. Depending on the animal and depending on the process that you go about, they can really become in tune with your kid and help them calm down. But the key is knowing, is that appropriate for your child? Because it doesn't work for every kid. Not every kid enjoys that. Maybe it's a stuffed animal. I know my child with autism, she is a big stuffed animal kid, and she loves to have stuffed animals and the things that she enjoys. So for the longest time, she loved birds. She still really likes birds. So she has tons of stuffed animals and birds, and they really help her with her stress management. Another thing that also helps is spending time outside, getting that fresh air, getting the vitamin D that you need. Eating healthy can also have a big impact. Making sure that you're exercising appropriately. So this kind of ties in with going outside. But then also another thing that is a big help is evidence-based practices and support. So having therapy, social skills trainings or groups, technology and video modeling or supports. So like assistive technology can be a huge help for your mental health, because especially for kids that are nonverbal, they want to communicate, and they communicate many times with their behaviors. And so giving them a place to channel that and help them learn and grow, it, like I said, it's about using your brain in different ways. And so them being able to do that really creates these different pathways to help them communicate better with us so we can understand them, because we just all want to communicate, but how we do that is different. So finding those ways that we can meet together is so important and so helpful. Another thing that helps is functional behavior assessments. So making sure that you're connecting with your health care team, your mental health care team, so that you can assess different situations, different times, and so that you can see what kinds of things are going to be beneficial, because your team is going to be so much help. And making sure that you have a team that is on your side is going to be so good for their mental health, your mental health, and that's what they're there for. So all I want to say to conclude is mental health is so important, and it is so important because it guides our days. It guides our path in where we're going. And if we don't take care of our brain, and then we can't take care and control of our behaviors, our attitudes, and the way that we interact with other people. So kids and people with developmental disabilities have a harder time because different elements of how they function are delayed or just different. So making sure that you are paying attention to the functionings and the reasons and the baseline is so important, so that we can make sure that we are helping them live the best life that they can, and reducing their stress as much as possible, but also encouraging them to grow and be the best version of themselves is so important. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Definitely make sure you check out our website. Make sure you check out our social medias. All of that stuff will be in the info box below. I also want to take this time to let you know that we are now open for our auction tickets, and our fundraiser. So this year we're going to be having our 4th anniversary fundraiser in July. So you can go to our website, purchase a ticket, or donate a ticket if you aren't able to come. So please check that out so that you can help us help other people and other families and other children. Also, we just want to connect with you guys. We want to know, what do you guys do for your mental health? How do you help your children with their mental health? Because I know it's not an easy thing. It's so easy to look on a page and go, oh, these are things that you can do. But to actually do them isn't necessarily as easy. But just know that you are never alone. There are always people who are going to be in your corner, in your children's corner, and make sure that you're connecting with those people. That's going to be the biggest help that you can get. So thank you guys for your time. I hope that you guys have a great spring, and I will see you guys later.
Waliwo kye ŋŋamba